how would you describe what Israel is doing in Gaza at this moment?
Yeah, your point is correct. So that happened after March 2nd when they cut off all the food and humanitarian aid. Well, you can't, there's no military justification for that. In that sense, if anybody still believed any of the lies Israel was peddling about, trying to break Hamas or this kind of stuff, that it was exposed. I mean, there's just no way around it. This is the weaponization of starvation, which has now reached very dramatic proportions. Not only are people starving to death, but doctors can't work because they can't eat. Journalists can't work because there's no food. They're too weak. So there's no military justification for that. But this is the last chapter of the genocide. It's the last chapter of all genocide. You can ask the 3 million Indians who died in the 1943 Bengal famine, or the Armenians, or the Herero and Namakwa in Namibia under German occupation, or that even in Srebrenica. I mean, you cut off the food. That's what you do in Bosnia, where I covered Srebrenica. So that this is the natural denouement of all genocidal projects. But at that point, yes, you can't. There's no military justification for it. And then, of course, they very cynically and sadistically use poultry food packages as a bait to lure starving and malnourished Palestinians to the south, to put them in ringed concentration camps. They have to be vetted militarily in order to get in. Initially 600,000, they're talking of putting all 2 million people in there. And then they'll sit and rot until Israel can find a way to deport them. So, and of course, the breakdown of civil society, that has always been part of the plan, and that's why they've always attacked police, destroyed all the universities, destroyed the intellectual class, targeted journalists, targeted doctors, and created this kind of hell on earth. That's all by design. So yeah, at this point in the genocidal project, you can't make a military argument for these kinds of measures. So I would say after March 2nd, the subterfuges that Israel used to mask its genocide were dropped. But Israel knows very well that there'll be no intervention. The United States will continue to supply it. I think about 80% of all munitions come from the US. The Arab dictatorships, with the exception of Yemen. Yemen's the only country that has attempted in any real way to halt the genocide. But, the collaboration with Jordan, with Saudi Arabia, with the UAE, you set up a land bridge. I was there. I was in Jordan last summer watching literally hundreds of trucks go over the King Hussein Bridge into Israel to deliver its vegetables and consumer supplies and everything else that were not getting through with any kind of regularity because of the disruption of maritime shipping by the Yemenis. So, but this was this is a project embraced by the Arab regimes themselves. Other than outside intervention, at this point, the only, I would say, moral response would be coercive, in the sense that you would send ships from the Turkish Navy and other navies to break the blockade and impose a no-fly zone over Gaza. That's what happened in northern Iraq, which I was there. I covered it when the Iraqi regime went after the Kurds, and with a potential genocide. Then the Iraqi forces were pushed below the 38th parallel, and there was a no-fly zone. That's exactly what should be done with Gaza, but I don't see it happening.
Yeah, I don't think Turkey is gonna confront Israel. I mean, it's not even confronting in Syria, which it recently became a patron of. I mean, Israel is amassing more and more land and the whole of sky, and Turkey is giving away effectively, while knowing that they have invested in that project for so long in Syria. Um, uh, you were saying that you've been writing a new book on Gaza, and you said you were able to interview Palestinians in Egypt. If you could tell us a little bit about give us some teasers about what your findings where while you
Right.
spoke to
So,
Palestinians?
so I have a book that came out called A Genocide Foretold, which tries to put the genocide in context. Remember, I spent many, many months of my life in Gaza, over 7 years. I mean, in fact, lived in Gaza, so it's something I know very well. But book is different. I'm doing it with a cartoonist, Joe Sacco, who wrote Footnotes in Gaza and Palestine. And we interviewed Palestinians from Gaza who are in exile in Egypt. And we're using their voices to reconstruct what happened on the ground. We're not interviewing any officials, whether Palestinian or Israeli or anyone else. This is from the ground up. We did a piece for Harper's Magazine about 2 decades ago called A Gaza Diary, where we lived in a refugee camp, Hana Yunis. Hana Yunis, by the way, is erased. It doesn't exist anymore. But we lived in the refugee camp and just wrote day by day what life was like for the Palestinians, including, of course, watching children being baited by Israeli soldiers in Arabic. So I was hearing these words in Arabic, ta'al ta'al, which means come, come, and then they would start saying even sharabuta and these curse words and stuff. And then the little kids, we're talking about 9, 10-year-old kids, would pick up rocks and throw them towards the armored jeep. And the Israelis saw I was there. The Israeli soldiers got out and shot them. In some cases, killed them. In other cases, wounded them. So that was just we weren't expecting to see it. It happened on one of the days that we were there. So I just wanted to show what life was like on the ground, and this is what we're doing now. Life under the genocide. So the first chapter is called First Day, and then Flight, and that's what Joe is drawing, and that's what I'm writing, because we don't want those stories to be lost. Any genocidal project is about erasure, not just erasure of a people, but erasure of a culture, erasure of their history, erasure of their stories. And that's, I'm sure we're going to lose a lot of money on it. My publisher, Simon and Schuster, told me not even to write a proposal. They don't want to see it because they don't want to deal with the controversy. But I think both of us, Joe's spent a lot of time in Gaza. I've spent a lot of time in Gaza, and we feel that it's a kind of moral imperative that at least the stories that we recorded are not lost to history. They are kept, and they are archived, and they are published.
I'm pretty sure this is not central to the book you're writing because, as you said, you are more interested about capturing the sort of everyday life to live under genocide and ethnic cleansing and what it means to record them in the voice of those who have escaped them. But I was just curious, did you ever ask them about their thoughts on the different political factions within Gaza, most notably Hamas and Islamic Jihad, but even the PA, if they're at all relevant? Did you ever ask them what their thoughts are on these organizations?
Yeah, of course. So it's a mix. I mean, we interviewed people who supported Hamas. We interviewed people who hated Hamas. Everyone hates the PA. I would say that's the kind of but it's just a colonial police force, really. That's what it does. It's completely corrupt, and I mean, you have armed PA factions joining Israelis in attacks against Jenin. I mean, against the resistance in Jenin. So yeah, the PA is completely discredited. There's a lot of anger towards Hamas. Hamas is a so I knew one of the co-founders of Hamas, Dr. Abdulaziz Rantisi, pretty well. And then after he was assassinated with his son in a car, I knew his successor, Nizar Rayan, who was then assassinated by Israel in his house with his entire family. But and I was in their homes and knew them. I look at it as a national liberation movement, but it's one rooted in a fundamentalist, Muslim Brotherhood type Islamic outlook. Large numbers of Palestinians are secular, and so by nature or at least they're not, fundamentalists. So because of that, Hamas tended to group around mosques. It was insular. Um, uh, so, and I think was clear disquiet over the fact that Hamas was able to shelter in tunnels while the population was just butchered, above ground. That was something that came out. But yeah, we interviewed people who probably were members of Hamas or their families. They didn't they didn't come out and say it, but I'm fairly certain that uh, they had strong connections to Hamas, and we interviewed people that just hated Hamas. Um, so it's a mix, which is good because it'll all go in the book. Where we don't write propaganda, we're not we're journalists. We write what we hear and write what we see, and um, so yeah, it's but there is a legitimate segment or a fairly significant segment of the Palestinian, at least from what I can read, of the Palestinian population in Gaza that is pretty angry at Hamas.
Hi, my name is Ayushman. I, along with Jyotisman, have started this platform. In the last 2 years, we have tried to build content for the left and progressive forces. We have interviewed economists, historians, political commentators, and activists so far. If you have liked our content so far and want us to build an archive for the left, I have two requests for you. Please do consider donating for the cause. Link is in the description below. Also, if you are not able to do so, don't feel sad. You can always like our videos and share our videos to your comrades. Finally, don't forget to hit the subscribe button.